So the little people rose up and tore everything down. And the reason that it didn't happen in Egypt was because they were so obsessed with the religion at that time that there was no intercultural penetration of these little people who were rising up within the kingdom of Egypt itself. There was no fifth column, if you will, or whatever. But, I mean, look at Eastern Europe. Look at the former Iron Curtain countries, how quickly. Ask Ceausescu how he feels now that he's dead, about what was happening in Romania and how quickly everything fell apart. And that's what frightens me, is that the ruling financial elite, having forgotten the basis for elite government, which is that there has to be an elite of some sort, and not just a hereditary, pampered, privileged bunch of stupid kids. People are going to go crazy when starvation, when they can no longer eat, when push comes to shove. When look what's happened with the Arab Spring movement. I mean, it spread throughout all of Northern Africa and the Middle East, and you have civil war in one country, and you're close to civil war in another too. And all this just came from one, poor merchant who was tired of being pushed around. Right. So it's a very volatile situation, and I think that, I pray that they will stop hitting the snooze button, because what happened when the first Dark Ages hit, when the Sea People's Revolution hit in 1200, is you had 500 years of culture basically ceasing to exist and going underground. I don't want that.
Yes. Well, neither do I. I do have to say something to you, Kostas, that I know you're not an expert. You don't have all the answers, but we are asking for your perspective. And we're hoping that your perspective might inspire us to think a bit deeper, and that we can come to our own conclusions through our own experience. So that's why I ask these things.
I understand. My perspective is that the answers have been given throughout history since forever, and we're the ones who are not listening to it. I mean, 2,000 years ago, you had a man nailed to a cross for telling people to be nice to each other. There's a parable in the Greek Orthodox Church that tells the difference between heaven and hell, and this monk, through his prayers, is allowed to, he's deemed worthy of having a glimpse of both. So he's brought first to hell, which is this huge hall, and there's a never-ending table, and the damned are seated at this table, and the table is full of food and good things to drink and wonderful, wonderful treats and all this and that, and they can't eat it because the damned are given this spoon that is exactly 1 meter long, and it's not long enough to bring the food to their mouth, and that's the only way that they can grab this food is with this spoon. The same thing with the goblets full of drink. They try to drink, it just dribbles out. So this monk then is taken to heaven. Then the damned are, of course, emaciated and swollen bellies and blackened and red-eyed and all this and howling, da-da-da. Then he's taken to heaven, where it's the same endless table filled with food, the same great hall and all this, except the people there are happy and they're joking and laughing, and of course they're well-fed and this and that. They're feeding each other. The spoons are just long enough for one to reach the other, and if one takes one glass and gives it to somebody else to drink, then the fluid, the drink doesn't spill out. So that's a very profound and simple lesson right there, I think.
Yes, and it's one of my favorite stories, so thank you for repeating it. My next question is, in that last chapter, you referred to the Chinese esoteric tradition of avoiding intervention in the course of affairs of the world at large, but stated that at times this tradition has been broken, and that many masters have merged their karma with the world's where they saw fit, that out of love and concern for humanity they actually step in. It is like they are motivated to intervene to restore the balance of life. Well, I'm interested in this merging of the personal karma with that of the world karma. Could you delineate the difference between personal and world karma or collective karma, and perhaps how and when that line is crossed?
Well, in essence, our personal karma is a part of the mass karma, right? It's just a matter of how much it affects where we're all going. I used to design airplanes, so when you want to steer an airplane, you don't use large movements when you have all this momentum going in one direction to initiate the turn. You start by providing a little bit of what's called trim.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Trim will get the plane going in the direction, and then you can start engaging further aspects of the steering mechanism to make the turn. But every little bit of trim helps. So, somebody that's an enlightened master sacrificing his own personal ascension on behalf of the world is what the Buddhist image of the Bodhisattva is all about. It's
Right.
what the main teaching of Christianity is all about. For me, it's just looking at, I'm a Stoic by faith. Let me put it that way. So, if I see another child, I see my own child. If I see an elderly person, I see my own parents. If I see somebody who's suffering, I see myself. So, if I do that, then how can I ignore them?
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you for that. I very much appreciate it. And I just have this feeling that we're so infantilized. Well, some of us are so infantilized now. We're going to be in for a rude awakening soon. And I hope some people are listening to this. So thank you very much, Kostas.
You're welcome.
Kostas, this is Disaster Cat here. My question is, would it be possible for you to describe more in detail how you envision the setting up of the new communities and lifestyles in order to get through the possible coming collapse period? I've done actually have a degree in history and have done a lot of studying of such periods. And what my family decided to do was to live in a small rural community in Ireland on the outskirts of a village. We're part of a community close enough to be larger towns for shopping by car, but they'd be about a day's ride by horse cart. We're also trying for middle ground between total self-reliance and taking the risk of being trapped in an urban area and dependent on public services containing no function. Is this the sort of approach you think is viable? And also, do you favor homesteads, individual retreats, planned small communities, or like we've done, basically just moving into a rural village and becoming part of the landscape while being able to, fortunately, we were able to work at home and have small businesses. One more thing, I have also noticed that rural Ireland, when we moved here, was very much like rural Greece when you moved there. And when the EU really came in, they tried to destroy the agricultural base, but they thankfully had not totally succeeded. So that's sort of where we're at. But any comments or information is most appreciated. Thank you.
I think that communities are far stronger than the individual. I mean, I grew up reading science fiction, so of course, unavoidably, I watched Mad Max and followed the whole post-apocalyptic genre. But one thing that occurred to me out of it, and for the record, I don't believe there's going to be an apocalypse or a disaster or anything like that. I mean, I think that our greatest danger stems from ourselves, and that has to do with, I mean, look at what happened to Russia, the former Soviet Empire, and how they've rebounded in a very short amount of time. I think we're in for a spat. I don't think it's the end. That having been said, I believe that when we come out of that spat, we're going to understand that the system of dependencies that we have instituted now is too complex. You cannot keep the matrix balanced. In fact, since professionally I'm involved with the matrix, and I'll leave it at that. There are so many aspects that are just not included in it that are astonishing. It's just It's just astonishing. For example, we rely so much on globalization and on the international transportation of goods, and yet we don't take into account and enter into those equations the burden on the environment that the bunker fuel spent by shipping during the course of that movement. It's not entered into as an expense in the cost of the goods. So, from a financial standpoint, it's a lie, because you're not actually getting something cheaper. You're passing that debt on, or that karma, if you will, to a future generation, because the carbon output, which is probably, I think it's third or fourth in the world, the total shipping fleet. If you look at countries, and don't hold me to this because I'm just quoting off the top of my head, if you look at the countries that are the greatest carbon emitters, you'll see that there's one culprit who isn't even on the charts, and that's the global shipping fleet, which emits as much carbon as one of the 5 top leading countries, and yet no one knows it's there. It's not factored into the equation, into the matrix of the cost of goods, but it must be. So, to get back to your question, because I'm rambling on again, I don't. Oh yes, that's right. I started out with the post-apocalyptic genre. I don't think that individuals can survive an apocalypse. I don't think that. I've seen a lot of people who are saying, I'm going to be a survivalist. I'm going to go up and start a homestead. And historically, and if you read history as you have, you'll see that doesn't work. You need to be part of a community that will survive, because you cannot predict, no matter how well prepared you are, every variable that you will encounter in the course of an event. I mean, it's just logistically impossible to say that I'm predicting everything. But the more people you have in a nexus, the more people you have in a particular group, the more skill sets exist, the greater capabilities you have within that group, and you have more and more people capable of dealing with a particular situation. So I believe that society will, of its own, because auto-organization is very much a part of our existence, organize into this state of affairs where you will have small communities organizing, where you have some local production. I mean, why import apples from across the world when you can grow them in your own backyard, for example? It's just, for me, it never made sense. Because there has to be a cost-benefit analysis somewhere other than just simply the financial consideration. I mean, I know that I prefer my children to eat fresh goods because it's better for them. So how do you put a price on that? I believe that society will, that's the next aspect, that we will grow, where these small entities will, of necessity, take shape. And then you'll just have a bunch of them. So you'll have, a bunch of little villages where you have micro-diversification everywhere, and you still have the country of Ireland, but in the context of importing cotton from India, that's not so important, because now I'm growing whatever it is I'm growing, linen or wool here or this and that, and I prefer to use that